This is Rasputin, a Russian holy man who healed people simply by laying his hands upon them and who survived being poisoned with cyanide. But how did he do that? Welcome back to another episode of Absurd but True. I want to talk to you about one of the most influential, yet at the same time ambiguous, figures in Russian history. Just looking at him is enough to send chills down your spine. I'm talking about Grigori Rasputin. Today, though, I want to focus above all on the more paranormal aspects of Rasputin's life to try to understand what's supported by science and what's not. At 193 centimeters tall, with dark eyes and greasy jet black hair, he was a distinctly creepy, magnetic, and very charismatic character who certainly didn't display the polished manners of high society. That's what they said about Rasputin, who was born in 1869 in a tiny village in southwestern Siberia. I'll read the name out to you since this is my fourth try at pronouncing it, and I haven't said it right yet. It's called Pokrovskoe. His family was really poor, so Rasputin didn't go to school, but from an early age, helped his parents in the fields. Then, at 18, he got married and went on to have 7 children, but sadly, 4 of them never made it to adulthood. But at some point, young Grigori decided to take a different path in life and joined an Orthodox Catholic monastery. But why, you might ask? Some say he suddenly had a mystical calling. Others say he simply went out to escape punishment after stealing some horses. Either way, the thing is, from that moment on, Grigori's life changed forever. After becoming a monk, Rasputin began making pilgrimages around Russia, and people started to believe that he was genuinely a mystic. You see, like I was saying, he was a really charismatic character, so the people he met not only believed he could predict the future, but they also thought with his touch alone he could heal the sick. But besides these so-called mystical talents, he was also beginning to have a series of problems. He was actually an alcoholic, a thief, and often engaged in sexual relations with those who sought his counsel. He was a pretty ambiguous or shady character. But as you can imagine, he preyed on this, as it helped him spin this whole aura of mystery around himself. One fine day, he arrived in what was then the capital of the Russian Empire, St. Petersburg. It was there that he met Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra, who were dealing with their son Alexei's illness. He was next in line for the throne and was said to suffer from hemophilia. According to some people, it was actually a viral condition, but it hardly matters. What was important was that even a tiny cut would bleed for a long time. So, as you can see, this was a big problem. Over time, Empress Alexandra reached out to a wide range of doctors, healers, you name it, a whole lot of holy men, but nobody could figure out how to make little Alexei better. That is, at least until she found out about Rasputin, the new mystic who had just arrived in town. So, they called Rasputin to the palace. He examined the child, laid his hands on him, and then left. After a few days, little Alexei just suddenly began to get better. Hold on a second. So you're telling me Rasputin actually did have superpowers? He really could heal the sick? I'd say that's a hard no. Let's take a quick step back. Before Rasputin showed up, the doctor had been giving little Alexei aspirin. It was a drug that hadn't been around for very long, so as of yet, they didn't exactly know all its potential effects. In fact, one of the effects of aspirin is that it thins the blood. Obviously, the doctors didn't notice, and Rasputin actually had no idea either. But what did Rasputin do? As a rule, he was against all modern medicine, and so he insisted that the child stop taking the stuff, and so, unwittingly, simply by removing the aspirin from the equation, he remedied the situation. So, yes, Alexei's health improved, but not because Rasputin had any kind of superpower. It was just because he stopped taking aspirin. At this point, Rasputin's career was truly ready to take off. So, the Siberian mystic started to gain more and more power. So much so that he even managed to talk Tsar Nicholas II into leading his armies in battle during World War I. This, among other things, allowed him to be alone with the Tsarina and just think about how important that made him within the Russian court. Indeed, his opinions could significantly tip the scales when it came down to deciding who would be elected and who wouldn't. Between the two of them, there was such a special connection that rumors started flying around that they were lovers. The more Rasputin's importance grew, the more his enemies multiplied. In fact, a significant chunk of the Russian aristocracy didn't take kindly to how he was interfering in royal affairs. especially after the defeats the Russian army suffered during the First World War, and Rasputin was fingered as one of the main culprits. So by the end of 1916, a group of aristocrats led by Prince Felix Yusupov decided it was high time he was disposed of. To do so, they came up with a simple but potentially very effective idea: to feed the monks sweets laced with cyanide. On December 16, 1916, or December 30th, according to the Gregorian calendar, Yusupov invited Rasputin over to his place, along with a group of aristocrats, and started to ply him with drinks and sweets, which, of course, were poisoned with cyanide. Nothing. He kept eating and drinking, like nothing was wrong. So you get the picture, right? Basically, all the aristocrats started to wonder what was going on. Not knowing what else to do, they pulled out a pistol, aimed straight for his heart, and fired. Rasputin hit the ground with a thud. But then, all of a sudden, his eyes popped wide open, and he jumped up and started running towards them. So, the conspirators, totally panic-stricken, bolted to the garden and hastily fired 4 more shots at the monk. They grabbed his body and threw it into the chilly waters of the Neva River. At this point, Rasputin was officially dead. Just a heads up, the version I've told you is obviously just based on what the people who were there at the time had to say, so some of the details might have played out a bit differently than how I laid it out for you. But obviously, no one can know for sure. One thing's for sure, though, he survived both the cyanide poisoning and the gunshot. How's that even possible? Over the years, people have wondered how Rasputin managed to stay alive for so long despite all the attempts on his life. As for the shot to the heart, that's probably the simplest to explain. Maybe he just got incredibly lucky, and the bullet didn't actually hit the heart, it just bypassed it, so he managed to hang in there for a bit. The really absurd thing is that he survived the cyanide. Many theories exist. One suggests that the conspirator who was supposed to add the cyanide to the sweets got cold feet and didn't go through with it. There's a more chemical explanation too, though. In fact, people think the cyanide might have been stored incorrectly or for too long. According to this scenario, carbon dioxide might have reacted with the moisture in the air, forming carbonic acid. The carbonic acid at this point may have reacted with the potassium cyanide, producing hydrogen cyanide, which is a gas that would have evaporated over time, leaving behind only harmless potassium bicarbonate. Thus, the conspirators essentially ended up poisoning the sweets with a harmless substance. We're not certain which theory is accurate or whether both or other scenarios took place at the same time. But one thing's clear, Rasputin didn't have supernatural powers. Alright guys, thanks for sticking with me this far. I'll catch you for the next video, right here on Geopop Everyday Science.